Okay, we should be live. Yep. Let's see how this goes. So, I've hopefully solved my chat problems by having a plugin added. What else do I need to worry about? I need to worry about that. Okay. So welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, I suppose, depending on where you're coming from. Just getting oriented. I've just been experimenting with a new plugin to OBS, which means my stuff's in OBS, but I don't see viewer numbers and things like that, so I don't know if it's working. So I'm just making sure as I click through. It says connected fine, so I think I can trust that. Okay, so why am I streaming? I am streaming because I want to not slouch in my chair and realize the camera's going to pick that up very badly. I want to work on trying to get the planning items piece figured out. I have worked on getting planning items in place over the last couple of hours, and it's working. It's saving data. But now I hit the first time in the rest of the application where I now need this domain events behavior. So when I create a planning item, right, or I add a planning item as I'm referring to it as, then it will create a new planning item and it will call add and it will complete. It then save changes and fine, right? But the domain events are hooked into the save changes so that we don't have to worry about that behavior being explicitly mentioned here. So when we hit create, we add a domain event of planning item created. So what I did in tenant management was created this domain event publishing interceptor, which attaches to entity framework. And when entity framework save changes occurs, it also tries to inject those domain events. But that comes with two problems. The first problem is that I have now this dependency upon entity framework, which in itself is not a terrible thing. But my interceptor has a dependency now on my mediator outbots, which is not ideal. So what I'm trying to figure out is the right order of dependencies. Basically, I have several crossing concerns in this, right? So domain events are a concept within my application, right? In this instance, and outbox is a concept of notification, right? So they overlap in a strange way. So what I'm trying to decide is, can I create a library that's, because they're not shared kernel, essentially, right? But if I pull in shared kernel, so right now shared kernel it's kind of like the dumping ground, because it has mediator and it has specifications, which isn't terrible, right? So this is obviously an extension of mediator. If I pull my interceptor into here, then I take a hard dependency on that library as well. Is that a problem? Not massively, because I have domain events in there, but the outbox works against iNotification, not against domain event. It just happens that I've made the outbox to solve this problem, right? So I'm trying to figure out if it's actually something something I need to panic about, right? Because shared kernel it quickly becomes the dumping ground, and if a developer is going to do anything, they're going to dump it in there, right? They're going to dump that straight into that bucket, and that developer's me right now, but you never know, right? So I don't want shared kernel to be the answer to, oh, we need this in this project and this project. Okay, that's shared kernel, right? If I can break out those concerns. But I feel that right now I might be asking too much of myself to try and work out to spin out these differences and generalize domain event publishing interceptor into something like I could take like the password approach that we did with water, drink water, where I kind of create a delegate that says, hey, you're going to publish, and this is how you're going to publish. And then I can feed that in to this, so I can create the publisher of the domain events as a generic concept without having this, and then define this when I start the application, right? As long as I have a publisher available, right? It shouldn't really matter. But is that taking it a step too far? Well, it keeps this from being, because right now, why do we register this? So right now in the application, I forgot Zoom in ID. So just to make sure that it's very clear on screen. Right now in tenant management, when we set up our DB context, we set up the interceptor, right? So we do that at that point. How would we do this if we'd made this a delegate, right? So let's remove this. So let's create public delegate task. T domain event, right? And then we put in a domain event. Can we do that there? No, we need a generic version. Because this takes a specific, that's the problem, yeah. We don't know. Hey George, how you doing? You are the first person to test my new chat plugin in OBS. I'm trying to make sure I can read YouTube and Twitch chat at the same time. As long as I don't show it on stream, I should be safe. How's it going? Oh, I just realized the stream audio might be a little bit quiet. There you go. Exactly, a legitimate first. So, what I am trying to do, it's going well, nice. And me, I'm stuck with a bit of a design issue today. Oh, that shouldn't be on. Just do one thing. Okay, so right now, so I'll kind of give a quick run through. So recently I've been working on this tenant management component and this tickets component, refactoring these out into some more clean architecture styles, right? Can I zoom? No, I can't zoom that specifically, but anyway, hopefully it's readable. So I've been working on this tenant management to the tickets component, where tenant management has created a tenant or created a user. It publishes events through Kafka that are really just integration events, and those get consumed, right? It also publishes domain events inside of this that it responds to, and two of those things are publishing those integration events. but I'm now working on planning items. So planning items is that's that. Where are we? Draw.io, a tool I know you're familiar with. So we kind of went through this diagram the other day where I kind of my concept is that you have tickets. Tickets are support items, and if a ticket needs to go for further, it's beyond a support item. It needs to move to another stage. Then there's an interim stage called planning items. Planning items is basically what product management would deal with. So they take a ticket and evolve it, and then they can promote it to a story. So it's kind of holding back just cards from being created randomly and just creating a massive backlog. So it creates these stages. And the concept is that from tickets to planning items is promotion. So that's not really the struggle I'm having today. How I'm going to do that is going to be the struggle. But what it's meant is that I've now got this planning items piece where I now need domain events. Right. So it's the first time I've needed this outside of this core application structure because I didn't use any of it here. So I had no knock-on effect. Now I need to, when I create something, start making sure that the right pieces are in place. And the way I noticed is I have this outbox pattern for this because I want a disconnect between. So if I have transactional coverage, I don't know if you remember this. If I have transactional coverage around many actions, I don't want events to publish if that transaction is going to fail and roll back. So I kind of put in this outbox for that as well. So it disconnects. So the problem there is, and that is a library that I've shared. The problem is here, I now have a dependency upon my outbox contracts from my mediator library and my domain events in my shared library, shared kernel. I'm yes, you only publish in case you, yes, yeah. But I'm trying to make sure that I don't drag in dependencies and make shared kernel basically dump pile for code that doesn't quite fit neatly in any of these boxes, right? Hi Mal, how you doing? You are the first YouTuber to say hello. This chat is working nicely. I can see it. I've got a Caster Labs has a plugin, a tool, and because I stream to both, I actually Rambling Geek actually got me. He did some research and found this and set it up himself and tested it, and got it so he could see YouTube and Twitch chat in the same window, so I can actually include everybody properly. Happy Sunday. Yes, happy Sunday. Impromptu stream, mainly because I want to get this focused on, because obviously challenge day tomorrow. Hi Carney, how you doing? So I wonder if, I would imagine that commands don't work in this window. That's going to be the next challenge. But anyway, because otherwise I'll put them into a YouTube chat, I would imagine. Oh, I can send deliberately. Okay, that's awesome. So yeah, if you haven't yet, by the way, in the Discord, I have a poll going, and that is to see which challenge I pick up tomorrow morning. So when I start stream tomorrow, it's going to be a bit longer because it's a day off work, and there is a poll there. So if you haven't voted and you're interested in seeing the outcome of that stream, yeah, please vote. This is a special stream. Yeah, kind of, in so much as I wanted to make progress on the whole planning items thing, and share that evolution, and also help me stay focused on the challenge ahead of me, right? So So yeah, I have a dependency challenge here, right? So I've created planning items. I've structured this out. I've actually created a story to add a planning item. And that is providing me, that is doing what I wanted to do, right? So again, like we I don't know, whoever was here for the stream of the day, I've kind of gone through this. Hi Raj, how you doing? Welcome. So a ticket will be a ticket. It's a support item. It will promote to become a planning item. So each of these is an individual component of the system, and I'm not building microservices in any special way. I'm building mini monoliths essentially, purely because I don't want to focus on labels. I want to focus on productivity, and I can worry about the specifics later. But so planning items is its own section. I've started to build this out, but now I have some shared infrastructure concerns. So we developed this domain event publisher to publish the domain events out of here. So when you hit save changes, whatever publisher we hook into this, it will get told, hey, yep, this domain event happened. But now I've linked two concepts together by doing this, right? So I removed the mediator I publisher and swapped it out with my own interface, my I notification publisher. But the challenge now is this is not general enough, and I have an interface that I'm using from my shared library. So what I'm trying to figure out is I don't want to just dump it in shared kernel, because shared kernel then starts to become quickly a grounds for, oh, that doesn't quite fit neatly within everything else. Let me stick it there. And the dependency is already growing on this as well, right? So I have the dependency on specification and dependency on abstraction on mediator, which is okay right this second, because my domain event's a mediator, right? So I have the components here for the most part, except I now pull a library reference, and yes, it's my own shared library. So you could consider it not a problem. But I'm just stopping and questioning myself if I can actually generalize this to the concept of the domain events only, and then plug in this implementation when I add this interceptor, so that I can remove this dependency here and maybe create an adapter. Maybe my libraries need to be kind of flipped a little bit. Here is where I'm going. So, but if you're new to the stream, this is an off time for me to stream. It's random based upon me having some available time and something that seemed like it was a good thing to share. The stream, though, is still the same as always, right? It's not about me being productive here. It's about conversation. It's about sharing. It's, so if you have questions on what I'm doing, if you want to know more, please feel free to ask, right? I'm more than happy to talk about this stuff. And it is not advanced only. So if you're beginning as a software developer, it's okay to ask questions and to kind of go into that. I don't spend a lot of time reviewing people's projects or anything like that. So if you have something you want to specifically ask about stuff you're working on, I do have a Discord that you're more than happy to ask questions about there. So, and that is there. Now, does that go into Twitch chat and not go out into? I'm trying to learn what these tools do. Okay, so announcements only go into Twitch chat. They don't come out into. Yeah, nice. I'm learning. I do not see those messages. So yeah. So is this an acceptable thing right now? So what I need to be able to do is I need to be able to go into here, right? And I need to be able to set an interceptor on my planning items, right? That's what I need to be able to do. I can't do that while that's in tenant management, right? So tenant management has this concept, and I do add interceptors there, which I don't have an issue with. And it does know about domain events. That's okay. I do need to do this. Right, I can't avoid this. This is okay. So what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? If I create a delegate, right, then that delegate has a need to have a domain event on it, which means I can't neatly plug it in as a requirement here because that T is unknown at this point, right? That T is only known as I get a single message. So do I need an interim interface? Let's go with building something in the middle and see how we feel about it, right? I'm okay with opinions on this, by the way. What I'm trying to do is make sure I only have the right dependencies at the right time, and I don't just pull everything in. So if I remove this need, right, let's say I create a public interface. I kind of need an adapter of some form, I suppose. Right. So this needs to be a generic interface. Right. Right now that's defined in here. Right. Because if I remove that, that's gone. Right. So if I create a, I don't want to make it iPub. If I make a domain event publisher that has that interface, right? And then that goes there, right? So that now, let's move this to shared, right? It knows about SQL Server. It knows about pieces that I need. That disconnects, that keeps this working, right? Essentially, as long as I can do something that does domain event publisher. So now, this doesn't feel too terrible. But now I need an adapter to switch my event and my notification publisher to be a domain event publisher, right? So where do I know about that? Sorry. So that disconnects it so that my shared kernel doesn't really care about how domain events do get published, that they have a domain event publisher. However, a domain event underneath, by the way, is a notification, right? So my notification publishing, we're not going to worry about Sonar Cube right now. That's a little bit excessive. Being that I'm ignoring most of Sol-Lint's issues right this second. So that gives us that structure. Our tenant management, now this still functions because now this is in shared. No, it's not yet. Hold on. Share kernel, interceptors, refactor this, adjust namespaces. Yup. Right. So that still functions. We could now go in here and do builder.services dot add singleton domain event publishing interceptor, and we can add interceptors. Provider goes to provider dot why, what did I mess up? I messed something up there. Oh, I don't need provider goes to because I've got provider, of course. When I do this, so provider, comma, is it the other way around? Okay, where am I missing that? Oh, I need to wrap it in parens at that point. Okay. No. I have a lot out of no question. Is it a sign of bad database if you've got null values in it, or are there scenarios where null value is valid? I mean, there's definitely validity in nulls. Sometimes I'm not audible. Any specific times? I mean, it looks like my volume's okay. I'm not peaking. I'm getting right near the yellow area. If anyone does have issues with audio, just let me know. I mean, I do kind of mutter sometimes. I do realize that, or if I look away, this microphone is very much a directional. Null values in database. I mean, yeah, it's perfectly fine if it represents the fact that you may not have data for it. Example, if I want a record here, right? I have most of my records follow. I have an ID, date added, and date last updated, right? Last updated has to be nullable, right? Because last updated, I might not touch the thing. So that's a specific case where nullable is absolutely fine. If there's a default value and you make it nullable, then you might confuse it, right? If you have a Boolean, say, if you allow a nullable Boolean in your database, that's a smell. Because you've essentially got a 3-state Boolean. Yeah, if there's a location optional, and remember, when you write code, when you design databases, you're telling a story, right? You're saying this can happen when you design it, right? So if you write a piece of code or you write a database structure, you're saying that NPC can have no location. Be careful with foreign key constraints. Implicit foreign keys, I normally go with. I do not do actual foreign key constraints. So, you know, if I have, I think tickets has essentially. So a ticket has a tenant identifier and an assigned user identifier. Now here, I'm storing the actual identifier, the GUID. My tenants have a GUID on them and an internal ID. At this point, I should switch that, and this should be tenant ID and assigned user ID. This is nullable because you might not have a user, right? But I don't use an actual defined foreign key. It's an implicit foreign key, and Entity Framework allows you to map that out pretty cleanly as well. Yeah, that's a lot of DBAs, and even DBAs in the companies I've worked at immediately remove foreign key constraints because of cascading deletes, right? We design data in a very different way these days, so it's you know, you don't always want cascading deletes, and you don't also might want to be able to remove one thing and not have to worry about it. Raj, if you feel that I'm still inaudible or there's still problems with the audio, just let me know. I do strive to get better audio on the stream and make sure that it's always understandable. Although Kani's here, so I would know pretty quickly if my audio was terrible. Yeah, so the worry of dead end data is smaller than the issues caused by nothing being deletable. Yeah. Yeah. You good design should mean you clean up things that you need to clean up, right? That's a responsibility thing. Cascading foreign key deletes are a nightmare to get around, especially when it comes to changing the structure or whatever. Foreign keys become very painful. So implicit foreign keys are fine, and there's no optimization benefits that I know of, other than, I mean, you could put indexes on those foreign key columns anyway to speed them up, but I don't know if it gives you any. Okay, good. Thank you, Raj. Um, I don't know if it gives you any definite advantages for the disadvantages it gives you. Got flagged. Yeah, sorry. Okay, that's an interesting challenge of using the plugin. I don't see flagged messages. Okay. Okay. Thank you for letting me know that though. Abbreviations. And don't use the word nougat on Twitch, by the way, because that will often cause problems. Okay, so I need some sort of review queue. Okay. Yep, and I've tested it on several streams since, and it still doesn't like it. Okay, so that is okay. We now have those things. So now we need to figure out how we're actually going to do this, right? How are we going to do this adapter, right? Because essentially what we need to do is, and this is annoying because I'm going to have to create it in a shared area, or because I have a concept, right? I have this domain event. This domain event is in my kernel, right? iDomain event is a kernel concern, which is an extension of iNotification. My challenge is maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I do need to accept the concern, right? Because if I go with this, essentially what I'm going to end up having to create is a public class domain event publishing adapter, which is an iDomain event publisher, right? That then takes an iNotification publisher, right? And then basically turns around and does publisher.publish domain event and then cancellation token, right? That would be required. Because no worries, George. Thank you very much for the look. Appreciate it. Appreciate you coming hanging out. So it feels like there's something here that I could probably utilize in terms of a pattern, right? Because that's what I'm doing. I'm adapting my iNotification publisher to be an iDomain event publisher, which cuts the dependency from shared on my library, but am I being too restrictive just to gain me that benefit, right? Where I don't have a further dependency on a shared library in my shared kernel. Again, it's more about when you do that sort of stuff, you've got to pause and think about the challenge it poses to future development, right? If I set a pattern of, okay, it kind of fits in everything, therefore we just stick it in shared kernel, then future developers come along and will just, oh, I can do that. I can use shared kernel because that's a dumping ground for everything. Let's add a dependency on this library. Let's add a dependency in this library, right? Which might not be a problem. That might be intent in what shared kernel is essentially intended for, but you should at least pause and make sure you are going to set a standard for future you, for future whoever. So I'm open to opinions here, by the way. If you get what I'm trying to do, if you want to know more what I'm trying to do, if you don't see the problem, please feel free to ask. You know, software development works better in a collaborative manner. It certainly does. It's why I'm streaming, right? Does that work? And where do I put that? So all I'm doing here is punting the problem, right? Because my outbox doesn't know about domain events. It's wrong for me to move domain event as a concept into my outbox because my outbox is for mediator, right? So domain event is not a concern of this library. This library is available, by the way. So the source code for anyone looking, the source code for this application is not open sourced, but components of it I have open sourced, and this outbox is one piece that is. So that is in my GitHub. And what this is an implementation of mediator outbox and then an implementation of the SQL Server components. So that what happens is when I publish domain events from within the application, domain events being events that happen within one of these components. The term domain event is something I don't like using, but I'm not panicking about those pieces. And then in this table, domain events get registered. So they get put in here, and then it runs a background service, which actually hooks it into mediator notifications and then publishes them as actual notifications internally. And that is the notification outbox. I do have a Kafka version of this as well. And it does need a bit more refinement. I need to start logging some ideas about these. But this is the entire event, right? So this is what publishes. So it's wrong to bring in a domain event into this, right? A domain event extension, no, that doesn't feel right either. So do I really have an option? Because if I pull the dependency against outbox into here, then I don't need this. I can go back to using this, and everything's fine. But it still feels wrong. But this adapter still needs to live somewhere, and where does this live? Because I need this in a shared area, which if I put into shared kernel will still require, this. So I don't benefit anything from that design. This might seem like a really silly thing to get stuck on, but it's worth pausing about, right? I really do feel this is worth pausing and making sure that I think about, because this is not going to be the last module. right? This is not going to be the last component of my system. I'm going to have many, many, many more, right? At the very least, right? We kind of discussed the concepts of, you know, Teams, notifications, search, etc. All these different modules will come around at some point. So yeah. So I'm interested if anyone's watching and actually has an opinion, or you know, what do you think? What would you do? Right? How would you handle this problem? Do you feel this is a not a problem, or you know? So, hmm. So that works again because I don't have an issue with saying it'd be really good to be able to say, okay, well now do um this, but give it some sort of publisher here. No worries, Dota. Thank you very much for the look. Appreciate it. Hope you're well. Hope I didn't cross over with any I checked streams before I started up. So yeah, because I mean, ideally, what I'd like to do here is kind of say, okay, and here's the function for doing what you want to do, right? Um, maybe I can do it that way. But the problem is that the delegate that would be required there would be really incorrect, right? If I put a delegate in, right? So if I do public delegate task domain event publishing delegate, right? It would have to take an object event cancellation token, right? And then that would go in there, right? Now here this would be broken because that would be await publisher domain event cancellation token, right? And now in our program, where we have our builder.services.add singleton domain event publishing interceptor, provider goes to, so we need to do this first, I think. Well, it shouldn't matter, but right. Let's make sure we do these in the right order. So we add the mediator outbox. The mediator outbox is that storage, that notification box, right? And then we turn around and we say new. How do we do this? Var notification publisher equals provider.get required service I notification publisher, right? And then we return new domain event publishing interceptor with a delegate that takes the main event, and then if the main event is iNotification, that's probably the wrong thing to do. CT, then we do notification publisher. This does not feel good. Publish the main event, comma CT. This does not feel good. What are you complaining about? Return statement is missing. No, it's not. Oh, parens is missing. No. That's that one. That's that one. Yeah. On brain. That's that. That's that. That's that. Oh, return. No. That's not right though, because that's not. That's really janky. So this is essentially the adapter. Let's see. We're going to start applying items and see what happens. If I get a notification in the table, that's awesome. That'll work. The outbot started. Now with outbots. But see the problem? So I got planning item created. Planning item created is and I'm back to the original problem now. So this interceptor, we had an issue, right? What would happen is this would go to publish, but it would lose its specificity. And I'm having the same issue here, right? I don't know what this type actually is now. Right? So this version works because I've actually gone through and made sure that it is the type of the event, the entry that needs to be processed. So this does publish as, planning item created. There's a name for this, and I can't remember what the name, the actual term for this problem actually is. But I now am back in the same place where I don't have that generic. Because if I put a breakpoint in, right, watch. If I go back here and I put a breakpoint here, yeah, inside my method and run that. So the publish happened because the actual database stored the message. This publisher is the notification. This is the outbots, right? This is not the actual. So the outbots did do the publish. It just didn't know enough information to actually do the thing. So if I send this now, right, our domain event is a planning item created, right? But when it gets in here, it's publishing it as an object, right? So to do this effectively, I now need to do that same code again where I say, oh, well, actually, do the generic part, which puts me back to the adapter. Right? So I think in the interest of moving on and understanding this problem, right, what I need to do is accept that that shared library gets the dependency on my outbox, right? As much as I don't want to, just do that. That moves me forward with the application, right? There's no harm in doing it necessarily other than the fact that it tells a story for the future where now my shared kernel has a hard dependency on an actual implementation called outbots. General concepts like messaging and database interactivity, I'm okay with shared kernel, but because they're general concepts. I need those sorts of things. But yeah, this is a very specific implementation. But I have now no choice because I can't mess around with generics here. Because I would need to repeat this effort, right? I need to go and get this. So if I do entry.getType, right, domain event.getType here, no, terminal isn't going to help me. Services, domain event.getType. It's giving me that it is a planning item created. So it does know, but it's just because when it gets in here, it's being published as an object and it's losing that specificity because those later layers don't do that. And I can't do that in line here as much as I can in the other one, where I can actually invoke a generic method that reapplies the actual type. And then, because what I need to do here is I need to say, okay, planning item created. I need that part. Because when it gets down to the bottom, it serializes the fields that are object, not, and that's actually what's happening. It's actually getting object and serializing the properties of object, which you can. So yeah. Wait, what? Hi, Nickers. How are you doing? Yeah. As far as I understand it, yeah. From what I'm looking at, yeah. Well, I haven't lost type information. It's not necessarily lost. It is attached to it. It's actually when so if I go down to, actually, maybe I can fix this because I'm in control of the outbox. When I get into here and I prepare the message, when I serialize that actual message, where are you? Default outbox message, outbox publisher. Yeah, when I get here, right, the JSON serialization won't work on this because it just treats it as object. So I need to make sure that I pass down the generic type. I could. Yeah, this has been a challenge this entire time of doing this because you can see the same code repeated over and over again. It's not so much it loses the type information. It's still with it. It just treats it as object. So I need to go and get that type again off the thing to then reapply it to make sure I'm publishing down. So this is actually a mediator publisher at this point here, right? If I don't do it this way, mediator just gets object. So there's probably something that I'm missing in this process. This is the sort of thing that you start doing and then you just keep repeating because it's yeah, that's fine. But I am doing this over and over again, and to do it here again would be awful. So I'm not going to do that. Yeah, because then, so what's happening is, by the time it hits this code that's serializing it, it's object, and it serializes the objects of the properties of object that are public, and that's nothing, right? So that's why I've lost that specificity. I've lost the information because it's just treating it as object. If I go and get type off it and then serialize a new to do that, that would be different. right? So maybe I could create a custom serializer, but yeah. So the actual challenge I'm facing right this second is one of, do I generalize this enough? Because my shared kernel library right now, I don't want to pull any dependency on my outbox, because I originally had this having a dependency on that, and I'm sharing this interceptor now into multiple projects. So yeah, but you can see the same code again, right? Where I'm losing the type because this would trigger that problem. So I attach the type. So this publish knows the event type, or knows the domain event type, then hands it down to the outbox, which then doesn't need to do that. So, but by the time it deserializes it again, then it needs to reapply the type to actually invoke it again, because every time you pass it around, it doesn't know. So you have to be you have to make sure you're using the specific type. But yeah, it's just a challenge of messing around with serializing, deserializing objects. That's giving me the issues here. So I don't know if you're around for me creating the outbots for the mediator stuff. It was because obviously I have transactions wrapped around some of the behaviors. Yeah. And I didn't want to publish domain events when behaviors failed. Also means if you fail to, very complex. Awesome. 180% complexity. Awesome. Yeah, I'm not sure how I'm going to rewrite that one to make that less complex, but that's interesting. I have cyclomatic and cognitive complexity plugins enabled, so as an indicator. But I think for right now, the pragmatic approach to doing this is to put this back to how it was and put my library dependency in here for right this second. Otherwise, I'm going to make a bigger mess. A domain event publisher method would be good, but then I'd have to create adapters, and those adapters then have to live in shared libraries, which triggers a whole new mess. So the cost of doing this does not warrant the effort at this point, right? So now that's functionally compatible. That's there. That's fine. You should have that. That is okay. This now all works. I should be able to publish this and see that the message will appear in here with the right type. So that's not an easy solution to accept for me, because it does feel wrong. There you go. And it processed, so it published the notification. No one was listening to it, but there's the message, right? Okay. So let's move that on a little bit. Okay, so we moved the main event publishing interceptor, because again, now that is required in 2 projects at the very least, and actually I should include it in tickets by default, otherwise I'm going to fall foul of the same problem. I'm going to miss events in tickets, but I don't need that right this second. We modified shared kernel, we moved domain event publisher, moved domain event publishing interceptor into shared kernel, along with outbox dependency, which I don't like. Dependency. dependency. I'm having quite the day today. Okay. Continue. Added scripts for database. Okay. I need to take a quick break. I'm going to run ads so that doesn't bother anyone while I'm back. So yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I will be right back. Okay, I should be back. My apologies for that. Dogs do need to walk. Okay, so let's get these changes committed. My apologies for fidgeting. Yeah, if you have questions, you think I'm doing something wrong, I'm more than happy to learn. This is obviously this is not new to me, but it is still, there's things I do day to day. There's things I do that just and add API endpoints. I wired up endpoint for saving. So there's always things we can learn. That's key, right? Not just assuming that because you've done something, it's the right way. Okay, so my story here that I'm basing this off of, right? I'm kind of a little bit back and forth right a second. This is all in the name of doing the promotion component, right? So I should be able to create a title, description. Assigned user is not a concept that we have right this second, but it is one I'm going to need. So how do I get assigned user? Well, that adds, and this is where discussion of stories matters, and this is kind of the entire point of why I'm doing this project, right? The entire point of this project is because this sort of stuff is difficult, right? And I want to improve as I go through this process of not only writing the code, but actually asking myself, how do I write these stories effectively? What is an effective story for me, right? How do I make sure that I'm tracking the right amount of work and I'm not just... Because when you're working on a side project, it's very easy to get bogged down in, oh, I'll do this now, I'll do this now, I'll do this now. And just the code flies, right? It's not a business environment. It's you can do what you want to do when you want to do it, right? But I want to treat this like I would a real project, like and a year from now when this is built out and doing all sorts of crazy stuff, which I hope is the case, maybe I'd say, let's flick the switch, let's make it real, right? Which is why I'm keeping it generally closed source, because I don't want to lose control of that myself. So the majority of the work is here. So sorry, I just need to make sure I'm keeping an eye on something. So yeah, I want to treat it like a real project. I want to treat it like the code it should be. But the entire purpose of this is I don't believe that the practices we use on a day-to-day basis are really helpful for software development. So rather than treat this like any other side project and just throw code at the wall, I want to make sure that I'm stopping and building stories. And I actually started today with doing that. I was trying to figure out, how do I plan ahead here? How do I effectively look at what I want to do, note those ideas down, and kind of pull the threads and figure out what is real, right? So, I have these general concepts. I have an idea of what I want to do. And my primary difference here is I don't want to just put tags on a story, right? So products like Jira, products like other Agile project management tools generally work in the fact that they've got items that you can attach information to, you can attach notes to, you can tag, you can organize, you can group, etc. Sometimes they deal with tickets, sometimes they do like Kanban boards and Agile boards, etc. So, they allow both styles. Kanban works generally well for tickets, whereas Agile planning boards work better for actual sprints. But what I want to do is I've introduced the actual three things as a workflow, right? So if a ticket comes in, if it's beyond a support solution, then it needs to be worked upon, right? But it shouldn't go straight to development unless they know enough about it to say, yeah, this is development ready. They should put it into an interim stage. And I want to create planning items as that interim stage. So planning items, product managers would work with and actually have their own sprints, essentially, or their own boards that have in progress, pending, So a story is the result of a planning item that's gone through those stages and is now ready when it hits the end of its board. So from a planning perspective, you could sit down with the product manager and look at their board, right? So they know what's pending. Work that's scheduled is still backlogged in the story side of things. So work that's available can still be picked up as you've planned it, it's ready, it's done, it's a story that can be consumed and worked on. So there is no, hey, product management, can you tell us, because you've kind of gone through that process. So, but these are general concepts right now, and how do I note these down? How do I get them from my brain into code? So, and that's a common problem, and I want to make sure I'm reviewing this now. The purpose of why I diverted there was assigned user, right? I sit down and we go through this process of planning. And that planning says, okay, well, sorry. Here's what I want. I want to actually assign a user to that, right? That's great, but this actually comes with a lot more concerns. And this is kind of why I want to make sure I'm trying to figure out the best way for my thoughts to address these, and how to lay these out as stories and get better at this story writing. Because assigned user, so to do an assigned user, right, means that I need to know about users in planning items, or I have a very simplistic implementation, right? So users is a concept within tenant management, right? Tenant management has a actually, domain is the best way to look at that. Tenant management has a user and a tenant user. Now, a user here is literally name and email, and that name and email is shared with Auth0, which is what I'm using for login. But that user doesn't go beyond here. There is a user created event, a domain event that's published, but that's more for me right now, because I want to do some actual work on monitoring and metrics, etc. But what does it mean to have a user now in planning items? Well, an assigned user means that I have to be able to say, okay, assigned user ID. And I have this concept in tickets, right? Equals no, yeah, that's fine. I have this concept in the ticket system, but to have that listed there, right? As a product manager, I need the ability to create a planning item. So if you're discussing this, right, you're discussing this as a team. So, okay, well, here's what I want. Well, we can't have assigned user. Why? Because that's way too big for that story. But I need it. Okay, well, the stories, I mean, if you go on the Fibonacci sequence, or the faux Fibonacci sequence, because it doesn't start right, but if you go on the Fibonacci sequence for planning, maybe a standard story for developing an API endpoint and inserting a record into a database is a 5-point story, right? Because you create the unit test, you create the integration test, etc. Whatever you do, you say that's a 5-point story. Well, that's now a 13-point story. Why? Well, because we've got to create a new service, we've got to create a new data schema, we've got to consume that data schema, then we've got to add validation into this endpoint to say, yeah, that user exists. Oh. Or you can have a 5-point story for this without the assigned user, and we can have another story for assigning a user to a ticket, no, to a planning item. In a realistic scenario, that might just mean, hey, you can have the planning item this sprint, and you might need the assigned user is a quick follow up, but it is a story that we can plan, we can prepare, but it's way too much to commit in one thing, and that's a team decision, right? In this instance, I'm reviewing everything, so it's okay for me to go off and do this, but realistically, I shouldn't do this going forward because it would mean it means that the work isn't broken up enough, right? I'm doing way too much. I'm committing too many pieces. The changes are more drastic. So, that is not useful, but it's not necessarily necessary to get this flowing. And again, that's what I'm doing, right? I'm putting a flow into the application. Just getting that API endpoint, I needed to create the planning items endpoint. I needed to wire that up using Mediator. I needed to hook that into this call, right? This call is another thing, right? I had to build this framework out. So I was already making a lot of changes, right? So in reality, what I shouldn't do is take all that work on as one, because I've got to understand what it means to the system. So, and again, that's why I'm trying to do this project, right? I feel that there is pieces missing here that that might delay. It might delay the process, right? It might delay until the next sprint. It might not delay anything. So, yeah, assigned user. I'm going to do it now as part of this because I think it's necessary, and otherwise I'll forget it. But it is something that I should definitely address, and I would advise, if you are doing that on a day-to-day basis, be careful about what you say yes to, because you might not understand the implications. And it's why writing a code base that is clear and readable is important. And I feel this is at this point, right? By the way, if you don't agree, that's fine. But I feel this is in a good place overall, from an understanding perspective, right? I know, hey, where's the entity? Where's the database? Where's the front end? What does it look like? How do I get to planning items? How do I look up? How do I create a tenant, etc.? Right? Those are things that I can get to quickly, and I keep testing those things. So, okay, assigned user. So to assign a user is a little bit more involved than just sticking that on there, right? I could do it, right? And probably right now I should do that part first, right? I should make sure that I can assign a user to the thing, right? So let's have a look at what I did with tickets. And tickets might be wrong here as well, right? So I've got to be prepared as well to address tickets. So with ticket, I did not have an explicit assign. In the application, I do not have an explicit assign user, right? Which is probably something lacking, right? So when I add a support ticket, right, I have the add. When I update a support ticket, I actually do a patch on the thing and allow several different things, right? So I do actually have update the status, update the review date. I do not have an event around assigned user, right? Maybe that's explicit, maybe it's not. But for the sake of cleanliness, I probably should make that an actual event that says, hey, assign the user, right? And now this pattern is getting a little bit out of hand. This style I'm not appreciating as much, because it means that this patch does update, but it does update whatever it needs to update and triggers the right events. But is that what I want to do, right? So, and also, I have another problem with doing this style, right? While I'm here, to make it work as a database object and a domain event object, I have to allow the sets, I believe. I can't make them private. Entity framework won't work with them properly. But it means that a developer working on this could, in theory, tick, tick, boom, thank you very much for the raid. Appreciate it. I am glad you are here. Thank you. Hope everything ended up well. I decided I needed to stream. I was getting way too carried away, just sat watching your stream, and I needed to get productive, so I hit start stream. So just got tired. Yeah. You were doing a lot. You get a lot of stuff done, so yeah. So I was getting a little distracted, so I decided to move over here. So Tick Tick Boom is for anyone watching. He is working on a startup project and streaming some pieces of that, and it's all the energy you need for development is right there, I can guarantee. I need to get set up better for this. Almost banned you then. That should work, right? Yeah, there you go. I have a little keyboard and it's messy. I need to get my equipment sorted out better. So yeah, focus. Thank you for the follow. It's just Triz. It's just Triz. Welcome. Appreciate the follow. So for those joining, what I'm working on is a platform for Agile project management. So basically reinventing the wheel, as I think that you do need to reinvent wheels from time to time. My apologies for the giant white screen from a dark dev screen. But basically the concept of the tool is I want to do this sort of stuff, right? I want to do planning and workflow. My value proposition, I suppose, is that I want to focus on the communication of the system, right? This is some random diagram I'm kind of working on right this second, because I'm working on this piece specifically right this second. But the general concept is one of communication. We oftentimes lose track of where things are, and developers lose lots of time, and every team member actually loses lots of time to, oh, where are we with this project? Oh, how do we know where this is? Did we fix that bug? I don't know where that bug is, etc. Or, where's this story in general, right? So what I want to do is I want to introduce the concept of workflows, essentially, where things don't stop being one thing, they become other things. So a ticket, so a support ticket, a customer has an issue, a ticket gets created, right? That's a common practice. Now we determine that ticket actually needs more work because it's not actually we say, okay, a ticket is something that can be solved, looked at, a solution figured out and fixed within half a day. Yeah, New King just got coronated. Nice. That took me a second then, because I coming from the UK, I'm like, huh? Yes, I saw I forget that, other European nations still have monarchies. So anyway, yeah, so you might say a ticket can only be processed within a certain amount of time, and that's okay. So it can be a support ticket, and a support ticket has a lifetime. But let's say that you need a support ticket to go beyond that, and it becomes a need for actual further work. Well, what traditionally happens is, oh, go and create a ticket in Jira, or go and create a ticket in tool of your choice, then put a link back to the ticketing system to say that's where it came from, right? And then that planning item, or that item, that story as we call it, right, is worked upon. The ticketing system has no idea when that story is complete. The support user who actually took the call, who's now getting calls from the customer saying, "Where's this issue? I reported this issue months ago," has no clue. So they have to go and ask someone. Someone has to go and say, "Oh, where are we this item? Oh, well, that's in the spreadsheet. That's scheduled for next month." Right? We lose tracking and we start creating all these processes around the edges. Right? I'm not trying to solve the creating processes around the edges. We're human beings. We do stupid crap. Right? So we're gonna add in pieces to any process we have because it won't solve all problems, right? But what I want to do is say, okay, well, that ticket actually becomes a planning item, right? It promotes to become a planning item. So all the information from tickets gets promoted to planning items. Now that is worked upon as a planning item, right? New notes are attached, new things are attached, etc. When that's ready to actually be picked up by developers, that's promoted again to a story. Lots of data replication, so a lot of eventing necessary, but it means that the ticket can still have notes attached to the ticket, and those ticket notes make it to the story, right? And they can be addressed appropriately, right? So if the customer reports an issue, a further issue, or some more data, that ticket can be updated by the support person, and that information gets in front of the developers. And then what I want to do is attach notifications. So if that story gets promoted to in progress, the support rep that was originally working on it actually gets notified as well, right? That it's now actually in active development, because that will aid in visibility. It will cut down in churn. It will cut down in the need to create extra process because people will actually know where things lie. Now, if there's things that shouldn't be public, that's an extra layer I'm going to have to work about, because there's sometimes you don't want your support rep saying to the customer, "Oh, that's actually coming as a new feature next year," right? You got to hold things back, right? So yeah, but that's a general concept. I want to introduce better workflow tooling into our agile project stuff. Oh yeah, I heard about that somewhere in Europe. All hail Frederick 10th of his name. A lot of hey Apex, good day. How you doing? Stream's going okay. It's a random stream. I'm working through some things, and just kind of waffling as I am good at doing. Didn't know turnips could type these days. Okay. Yeah, the chat color. So I'm using Caster Labs for joining the chat, so that if anyone from YouTube wants to type something as well, I don't lose it or miss it for like 20 minutes or have to have weird screens. So I'm using Caster Labs to join the chats together. Um, so yeah, I think that no. Anyway, so let me continue, because otherwise I'm going to get completely distracted, and that was the point of the stream, right? So I can kind of keep myself on task, because I was watching Tick's stream, who was working away, getting stuff done, and I was just enjoying hanging out and chatting, and realized that I wasn't getting I wasn't getting anything done myself, so I hit start stream. But as you said, I think I was in Tick's stream yesterday, and I said, you know, from stream being distracting, and one thing that you've learned is to get back on focus and back on track. It is something that you have to practice a lot of. Because if you want to interact with chat, you've got to be able to switch back and forth. So, fun history trivia. Depending on what you count as wars, Denmark and Sweden have fought each other more than any other countries in history. Those with a heavy grain of salt. Gotta remember, I started streaming on Twitch doing development at the age of 15. I'm 21 now. Yeah, I mean, I've been streaming. I've on and off. I mean, I've been streaming for the last 5 years. So, you know, I have done a lot of streaming. I mean, you and I are pretty much the same size, yeah, in terms of followers and stuff. So we are close in probably time streaming as well. But I think my 5-year anniversary, affiliate anniversary, is up in May. Yeah. Yeah, I think basically it's just one big group of people without good attentions at this point. The topic at hand is usually somewhere, I just don't know where. But again, I think that aids in community building, right? You've got to be able to talk to people, right? I see a lot of streams that are like, I'm trying the streaming thing, don't talk to me, or, I'm focusing. Don't stream if you're focusing. Right? If you don't want to chat, that's one thing. But most people come to streams and want to interact in some way if you've got something to share. So, yeah. Anyway, that's my point on streaming. Okay, so to do assigned user, right? Let's go the basic components first, right? So I need to be able to assign a user. And what I want to do is make sure that I'm consistent in my style over my no tests on the domain. Awesome. Concerning update tenant, concerning support tickets. So I now have a concept of assigned and unassigned, right? So a ticket can just go in there and not be assigned, right? So when a ticket is added and is not assigned, there's no assigned user. That's the point, right? When a ticket is added and is assigned, there is an assigned user, right? I'm not validating that user exists at this point. That's my start test project. Empty. I'm trying to be a little stronger on this. So I'm gonna mix and match where I need to, because I need to move forward. But at the same time, I want to make sure I'm backfilling at least the components. And then have the update scenarios when ticket is updated. So I want to follow a similar pattern, right? So if I go into test planning items, when planning item is added, right? I now need to change that a bit, because I now need to say and is not assigned. Yeah. So what I'm doing is so I'm not purely CQRS in so much as I'm not having separate read writes, etc. But my endpoints, I'm using fast endpoints for my API. Therefore, I can use verbs here. When I post, I'm literally mediator.sending, or if it's a more complicated workflow, I'm not overloading mediator in so much as I'm not doing multiple mediator calls. I create what I've referred to as a use case. Originally called a workflow because I like the word workflow, but I kind of termed it use case just so I can align with my understanding. But this then sends a command or query, etc. So yeah, I'm utilizing CQRS through mediator. I'm using mediator, not mediator. I'm using fast endpoints for the APIs. So, right, when it's not assigned, we now need to have the concept of assigned. So I'm going to have to change things here just to try and keep things cleaner. So planning items is now going to need an assigned user ID. So George, to your point, right? What did I call it actually in tickets? Again, I want to make sure that I'm consistent here. Consistency is hard. So imagine this world where separate teams are working on these things, right? This is where actual unit testing becomes a challenge. TDD becomes a challenge because I'm working on planning items, I'm working on tickets, right? Separate teams work on these things, say, right? In the ideal world, right? You have different teams for different pieces of the project. You've got to sit down and decide your schema, right? So if you decide your schema, because your names align, you've got your behavior. So when it comes to writing unit tests, you struggle because you're like, well, how do they write their unit tests? What are they doing? Okay, we'll just copy and paste those unit tests. So you've really got to stay pretty strict on that point, and it's easy to lose track of that as well. And I'm the developer solely of this, right? And I'm going to lose track of that. Can you use IOCD? Yeah. So, yeah. When I post, I have the mediator sender in here. There is a common. I think actually endpoints kind of supports just passing straight through. I think they have a mediator piece right in there. Because a lot of the examples now are pretty much a straight pass through. I just don't. I like this separation between the HTTP concerns and the application concerns. So I don't like the concept of like blurring the lines, even though they're pretty much always a pass through. So I've been using validators at the handler level as well. So my application. Let's see if I have an example. Where did I put them? I'll put them inside, didn't I? Yeah. I think it's on tenants, tenant management, application, tenants, commands, associate user with tenant. Nope. I know what I'm doing. It's fine. Use cases. Yeah. I have the validators in here. So these validators I add, and they get run before these execute. So the validation gets injected as well through a behavior, and they get aligned there. So I'm able to add validation pretty quickly through that same method. So the post looks the same, but the validator fires before this actual command gets sent. God, it is fun to hear you use these expressions. This was a lot of our third semester project, though we didn't use microservices. You may have seen with gems, we disregarded the strictness on REST and used just data on a post request to handle errors in data, or event sourcing. Event sourcing, I actually had a thought that maybe I would write something that showed simple concepts of event sourcing and do the stream on that. Or a video. Not sure what yet. Yeah, I mean, so here's a reality. Software development, there's no perfect way, right? There is nothing perfect about software development. There's nothing perfect because every single project you come against has different challenges, right? It could be a naming challenge. It could be a structuring challenge. It could be a requirements challenge. It could be all sorts of things. So you've got to be pragmatic about software development, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm using the verb, right? I'm not trying to be restful. I'm not saying I'm going to be restful. This is the way I think about the software, right? If I want to go for how do I register a tenant, right? I start at the endpoint. I go to post against the register endpoint, right? That is how I register a tenant in the tenant management piece. From an API perspective, I just go to register, right? I'm going to use an API gateway that wraps around the entire project. That API gateway will have tenants/register. I do not need to worry about it specifically at tenant management, right? So it keeps it kind of organized. I have a question. Should you return your updated entity when you run a put request? Because I know there are two schools of thought on this. I find scrapping REST conformance enables that desired level of separation on your app level architecture. Yeah. I don't believe. So again, I think Tick Boom's right. The reality is it depends. What is your use case? right? And one of the things I'm trying to do here, by the way, is actually um, oftentimes you develop a slice, right? And what you'll notice so far, and I'm sure it's turned some people away from the stream, is I am doing web development in so much as I'm doing the API components, right? But I'm not putting any UI at all on this application, right? And that is very deliberate. If I put UI on, that UI is going to influence how my backend works, because by virtue of, oh, I need this data, but to get this data, I need to use this. Oh, okay, well, let's just stick it in that endpoint, right? Or let's put that there, or let's make that decision to join this data, or, I'm going to make decisions that allow me to do what I need on the front end, but they could be sacrifice of um, cleanliness on the back end. So I'm developing an API before I develop any UI. But another is I thought instead of returning the updated entity, the request should do a redirect after having updated to a get. I struggle to understand why. Returning your entity, why do you need to do it, right? Is first for me. If you're saying, hey, here's some data, then you have the data, right? All you need to know is that that was a successful change. So just, yeah, it was successful. My data applied. So if you're using some form of front end stuff like NGRX or whatever in Angular or other kind of, there's state pattern stuff, right? React is, that's why I probably avoid React, because that entire pattern confuses me, and I know it's heavy in React. But it's kind of like your data stores and you put and the whole thing. Well, the event that says, hey, it changed, can still fire, and your UI is updated and you've got all that data stored on the front end, but you already posted it. All you need to know is that it succeeded, and if it failed, roll back a state or indicate that it failed so you can make that change. So you don't need the full object every time. It says the correct answer is dumb. No, they just, I mean, I wouldn't say dumb. I'd say that, like everything in life, there's a lot of opinions. Some people believe that some people have read a book and believe they know the answer. Some people are good at very good at implementing exactly what a book says it should be, but a book is just someone else's experience, right? And oftentimes, the first time you hit an actual business use case is oftentimes when the book falls apart and you don't understand how to take it, because the book hasn't given you the tools to think for yourself. It's giving you a set of, here's what I think you should do. And once you go beyond those, here's what I think you should do, you're a bit stuck, right? And that's the difference, I think, between just I mean, when people think verbatim on an opinionated decision. Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's yeah. There's no one answer, but that's the beauty of what we do, right? This is why I think that this is more artistic in some days than it is actual. The engineering aspect of it goes away, and the artistic aspect comes out. Art, I came at the right time then. Hi, Fullbox, how you doing? The correct answer is what is decided based on the needs of the project. Pretty good, just chilling. Nice, nice. For those who have not seen it before, by the way, I feel obliged to do this because it's so Fullbox just got their Steam page up for their game. Did that work? That did not work. Did that go through? No, it just completely ignores it on that screen. Okay. Fullbox just got their game up on Steam for wishlisting, but there is a version available to play with. If you like puzzle games, I can highly recommend it. It's very addictive. Did my message not go through? Did you get another block message? Join us. Usually it's a single page application thing, I guess. Yeah, I agree. I'm just annoyed being, yeah. Just a long one. Of course, but I know that there is a thought that instead of returning the updated entity, the request should do a redirect after having updated to a get. And I've struggled to understand why. Okay, yeah. Is that the one you're talking about? Yeah. I get so many people saying Kubernetes is dumb at small project level, and yes, I actually would agree. No? Oh, no. Nope. Then I didn't see a message. That was the biggest one you've written up to that point. So, yeah. Especially when you need to learn Kubernetes. As a side effect, I happen to know a lot about Kubernetes before starting Gems and provided a solid solution to scalability from the get-go compared to other means. Yep. I am not claiming. Nope, both Twitch. I'm checking both just to make sure, but I do not see. I do not see a message. Huh. Twitch can be flaky with chat sometimes. It can be. Is there a character in it that's weird, or because it's not blocking it, it's not doing anything block wise. So, yeah, excited for the next steps too. Yeah, yeah. Full Boss's game, definitely worth checking out if you like puzzle games. There's a version up on itch, and I can say for certain that I have to stop playing it because I need to be productive myself. No, I know it is not on your end. There are a couple of regular smiles, but nothing else. So, so where were we? Yeah. Okay. Let's close that out. So anyway, consistency. That's where I was. I was on consistency. You can wait for the full version. Yeah, I'll actually dust off my gaming PC and play on an actual gaming PC. I do have separation of concerns with regards to computers as well. So I do have a dev PC, a stream PC, a game PC. Regarding the redirect to return entity, my educated guess is when you do a single page application, then you would return the object. But for something like a Razor page, you wouldn't. But then I feel like you're making design decisions based on your potential front end implementation. There we go. Okay. Yeah, it allows me not to have games on a dev PC, so I can't just sit and play games if I get bored, because I would do. Well, you're limited to like 500 characters in a Twitch IRC chat, so yeah. As for why, I mean, again, like, the case is, what do you need, right? One thing I've been trying to formalize as a concept, or as wording it, right? Oftentimes, we get stuck in code, right? We have a problem, and what we tend to do is try and work through the problem and invent things or change things, and what we call that is over engineering, right? But one thing I've learned through doing this project is sometimes you hit a problem, and yes, sometimes you need to engineer a solution, but sometimes that problem's telling you something. You're using a library wrong, you're using a framework incorrectly, something doesn't quite feel right. Is there a better way out there to do it? And oftentimes we go, oh, it's more practical to move on and do something, and then we get told it's wrong, right? So we feel bad about ourselves, right? But we've solved the problem. I'm trying to figure out how to word this properly, right? Because I want to write something on it. I do want to put some of this down, because I think that the imposter syndrome comes from not trusting yourself. The imposter syndrome is created from feeling that you're doing things wrong, that you're not doing things the way other people should do. You read a book and it says you should do this, and you're like, but I'm doing that and I don't know how to not do that, right? You're solving a problem, you're engineering a solution to a problem, and it's okay to move forward with. Writing your code in a way that it can change. Imposter syndrome comes from comparing yourself to others a lot. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're looking at how a book does it, if you're looking at how other people write code, and you don't understand how to write it, or you feel that they're doing something that doesn't feel right for you because you've not come across that problem or whatever, you're gonna, at some point, every developer will hit a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? Some probably few less than others because they're a little bit more confident in themselves, but it's a reality. And I feel it all the time, right? I look at people doing really cool things and I feel that imposter syndrome. I've been a developer for a lot longer than a lot of people I'm watching, but it doesn't mean they're not smarter than me. It doesn't mean they're not better than me, or they've got these concepts down. So what you got to do is work through it, right? Believe in yourself and solve a problem, right? And that's why I kind of guard against, if you want to come into the stream, right, and no one's ever done it in 5 years of streaming, no one has really come in and said, you're doing that wrong, without some level of ability to tell me what I'm doing wrong, which I appreciate. Maybe I've attracted the right sort of people to the stream over the years, right? But I've had people come in and say, hey, you're doing REST wrong, right? Because I was trying to do REST. But they were then able to sit with me and go through what they believe was right. And I agreed. I don't know if I've kept a lot of those lessons because I was like, nah, I'm not worrying about that too much. It's too much of a stress, right? But I've made that decision. I've moved forward. I've made that change. And I feel that I developed right code. Or right code for me. So the point there is back to the entire thing about retrieving the data, etc. Do what feels right, but if something feels really wrong, spend a little time in figuring out if it's a pattern that feels wrong because there is actually a better solution, or there's something that fits better. There's also people that know next to nothing about coding and they still make incredible things. Sometimes it's the knowledge, it's the feel of it. Yeah. Some people have a talent, right? Was more trying to understand why the books and companies and stuff claim this is the best or correct way. You'll drive yourself crazy. Don't. Spend the time implementing code, right? Boom tempted to log into my bots account to do that. I'm working hard on just doing work and not overanalyzing things because if I want to do it right in the first try, I'll never get anything written. Yeah, do work, do stuff, right? Don't be afraid to change things. Don't be afraid to flip things on their head and learn, right? This stuff, the application domain infrastructure stuff, this clean architecture style, right, that I'm adapting to using, that one doesn't count, right? I'm trying to grow, right? And what it's taught me is now that I've actually made some of these changes, things feel cleaner. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to formalize my wording around what I'm actually trying to describe there, which is I changed the way I was doing something because of a library, right? That library, it felt like I was pushing hard against it, doing one thing. So I did engineer some solutions that do work for me in the scenarios I have. But once I change to use this pattern, things start to click, right? Using this domain pattern, right? The events. Now I can actually hook into these events. So I can actually use behavior in Mediator to get these events out and actually log things happening in my system that previously I wouldn't have been able to do. So I grew in doing this project so far, right? This is kind of impressive. Chat is showing up on your overlay before it shows up in the chat in my browser. Distributed computing at its best, right? Everyone needs the messages. I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't want to tackle Twitch scale. I'm surprised that we don't get messages from other chats every now and then. People also forget that, but they are building on IRC, so it is a well-established protocol. So, yeah, you grew so much your spawning minions. People also forget that things are best practice now might not be a thing in 5 years, maybe even less. There's always new way of doing things, and maybe have new perspective or idea will move everyone forward. Yeah, look at the way we develop code. Right, I was actually in a chat. I was in a stream last night. A developer, a .NET developer who was picking up Rust and writing, you know, Rust code, and I was talking about how C# has kind of been slow to change in a lot of respects, and the way we write C# these days, there's not a lot of object-oriented programming. There's a lot of functional style, and the language has evolved to kind of represent that in some of its syntax. The libraries that we're using, they kind of follow these patterns. There's a lot of stuff out there. While a lot of Twitch is ASP.NET 4 and they still manage to yeah. Good engineering, a bit of luck, and a lot of hardware, I would imagine. I'm also in the situation that I'm surrounded by some people who are very insistent that their point of view is right, and you have to push hard to actually get them to argue their point and listen to my counter arguments. Don't. When it's hard for the imposter, don't write code. Don't. If they tell you they're wrong, they have to show it. Otherwise, they can't tell you they're wrong. That's not a constructive environment to be in. Just write code, right? If they are truly right, they'll show you. And if they're good at what they do, they'll show you, and you'll understand it, and you'll be able to say, I don't agree with that. I'm going to do it my way. I'm a student worker, and their scene isn't, and usually a situation I have to deal with when I do a PR. Okay, then if they're not, I think we're going to get onto lots of opinions today. I should move into just chatting at some point. Senior developers are another thing entirely, right? If you strive for that title, if you strive for the word senior, why are you doing it, right? A senior developer should be able to help, should be able to guide, should be able to teach, right? You're wrong is not an acceptable answer in any situation of growth, especially as a student worker. But yeah, don't apply those opinions unless they can explain why and walk you through it. Don't apply those opinions in your personal stuff, right? Go the way you know. Isn't senior just a way for a company to differentiate the pay rate of everyone? Pretty much, and it's silly, right? It shouldn't. It was like, I was looking at a job the other day. It was asking for a senior developer with 3 years of experience and 4 years of school. So you want someone with more education than they do have actual experience. That's all you care about. 3 years of education, and they were not like right? They were 3 years of experience and 4 years of education for a job that was paying $150,000. Okay. That's why I argue with them when it comes to it, because if I feel like I'm right, I want them to argue their point so I can show me I'm wrong. Like when we do coding that is reliant on the current time, and the tests are terrible because they refuse to implement a time provider. Time provider, ugh. Unit testing based upon time. That's a different challenge. Actually, I think .NET 8 actually introduces time provider as an interface, right? I think they finally made it so that there is an actual time provider. There's an abstract time provider class. Yeah. I haven't used it yet. I know that I've heard about it. And it's to solve that problem, right? But yeah. But his bloat is because he has to take care of all the time implementations. Yeah. Well, if you look at so pretty much the most famous .NET developer, um, um, John, name, pretty much famous. The biggest Stack Overflow contributor, whose name is eluding me right this second, who created wow, names, not a day for this. John Skeet, John Skeet, who's actually a Java developer, who is the most famous .NET developer, right? Um, his day job is a Java developer, and his side project is a .NET library called Jota Time, or something like that. But he's written an entire library around time. Um, yeah. Also, when we do integration tests, they actually use their REST endpoints to put test data in their repos instead of marking the repositories. So it's not we are testing on one thing, we are testing several. Well, again, it sounds like you're in a position of not being in the greatest learning environment, which is horrible, being that you're in as a student developer, I suppose. Is a student worker, you put it? Yeah, he literally does both. Yeah, he's very good. John Skeet is I think the single biggest contributor to all Stack Overflow by a long way. And he's super friendly. Yeah. Well, the language you want to use for the job you want to do, right? But yes, coming back on the senior developer thing, yeah, senior developers should be guiding you. They should not be forcing you to do something their way because they feel they're right. I get that sometimes timelines, deadlines, etc., but a good team can grow and learn. So striving for that senior title, the senior title should come with more expectation of leadership and of guidance to those that aren't senior. It shouldn't be a time-based thing at all. You should be able to show and demonstrate on a routine basis. But anyway, and for anybody joining the stream, I don't know. I actually, because of the way I've got the screen set up, I don't actually know who's watching, how many people, where they're watching. But if you are new to the stream, do not feel that you are not welcome to contribute to any conversation. Do not feel that you can, if you want to say, hey, get on with the code, that is actually perfectly acceptable. If you're watching for the code, then I will get coding. But this is all important stuff around software development, and this discussion is one that is kind of we should all have. No. It's not derailing. If it's on point, which software development is very much my point, right? This entire project is about being productive as software developers, right? Then it's not off point, right? It can be rough at work sometimes. I'm still learning a lot, but these issues can be hard because I would like to do it a proper way, and I'm open to being wrong, but I want an explanation for why I'm wrong rather than just being told. Yes, that's an unhealthy way. So what I would often do, by the way, is like, if kind of on the vein of the talking about relation with coworkers and stuff is still talking about development. It's part of it. Yeah, this is all part of our world, right? This is part of the world of a software developer. We're talking about that when I'd work with colleagues who were not au fait with C#, right? It's often good to test yourself, right? Just because I've done something for a long time doesn't mean I'm any better than any single person in this chat or any other single person I work with, right? I know different things. I've learned different things. I've done different things. Everything I've done here, I suppose this is what makes me a senior developer, right? I've done a lot of this stuff for real. I've learned some lessons. I'll make some mistakes because I've made them time and time again, and no one said you're wrong. Here's a better way of doing that, right? And that's okay, right? I'm willing to grow. The whole thing, if it wasn't for ESSA coming in and challenging some of what I was thinking about, and pushing back a little bit on giving so much information in the Discord, which if you are not in the Discord, you're more than welcome to join. There's a link below the chat. ESA has been providing us with a lot of content on everything from domain-driven design to patterns, practices, etc. So yeah, but yeah, what I would often do is if I was asked, hey, how does this work, rather than say, oh, it just does that, just copy this, right? I would go and write a sample program with a lot of comments in it that demonstrated the principle, and see if I understood the principle well enough to discuss it. And if I did, I'd share the program, and if I didn't, I'd go off and learn and see where my gaps in my knowledge were, but I'll also share those gaps in knowledge, again, streaming, right? I'm okay to be vulnerable and to be accepting of the fact that, I'm human, and that's part of it. So I think a senior developer should be able to accept, okay, I can grow here. Staying humble through all, that is the way to go. You gotta remember you were once where that person is, right? I find it funny because software is quite an odd situation. It is a type of engineering which goes in hand with wild banter and behavior craziness, but it exists in companies which don't understand it all the time. There's software development companies that forget they're software development companies. I think it's also hard for me just because I have that imposter syndrome going, but some of the people I'm surrounded by claim things more confidently than ChatGPT. Trust but verify, I think, is the phrase there. If they feel they are right, okay, right. Just remember though, that imposter syndrome is only there because you let it be there, right? If you believe in yourself, it's not overconfidence to believe in yourself, right? It's I am doing what I know, right? You are you. Your measure is you, not me, not Tick, not Fullbox, not anybody else, right? If I look at things like Apex and Fullbox, right, they're doing different things. They're doing different game stuff. I look at their code and Canny as well. Like game developers, that's a whole thing that I can't get my head around, right? They have their skills, they have their talents and their things, and I look at them and I'm like, I'd love to be able to do what they do, right? And I have that little bit of, I'm not smart enough to do that, right? But they might look at some of what I do and think, that's not stuff I know how to do, right? So we all have different things. So the more you believe that you are the imposter, the more you'll believe that you're an imposter, right? So it's self-fulfilling is what I'm saying there. So don't let it get into your head. Use the time to grow. Treat every project, we're all idiots when we compare. Yeah, treat every project as a learning exercise, right? Not all projects will succeed. Some projects will fail. Some projects will fall quickly and they'll fall hard, right? But take what you've grown from, right? Use the opportunity to say, hey, did I do something different here? Yeah, I did. Okay, then I learned. It doesn't matter if it failed, right? Yeah, definitely don't take project failures as a personal failure. I'm trying, which is also why I do my own thing and don't show it to any of the people I mentioned. Yeah, you don't need to show them anything, right? You don't need to prove yourself either. You're there, you're working. If they don't want to do it or listen to your way of doing it, and I've worked with, and I'm not saying you are, but I've worked with interns that are very opinionated because they're very smart, right? And they come in and say, hey, we should do it this way, right? Because they read a book on it, or they, and that's the way it might feel. Like these people might be feeling, oh, I'm the senior, right? I've met a lot of people like that. It's kind of why I modeled my career the way I did, right? Because I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that, oh, I know way more than you because I've been doing this for, I use the number, right? I do say, hey, I've been a developer for 20 plus years. I don't do it as a boast. I do it to say, hey, look, I have been around so that I can look at something, but I don't know everything, right? I want to be honest about that part. So, but it's amazing how people will feel more comfortable if they feel like, or intimidated, right? It can actually have the opposite effect. but to know that someone is not just a new developer, right? Deflux, you did make it. Okay, well that was a great stream. Thank you. The close-up cam is because I messed up. No, no swearing. Language control. The close-up cam is because I messed up the camera before stream, so it is a little closer. It's zoomed in. I wasn't playing around with it. It is on autofocus, so I don't want to screw around at this point. I'm trying to fix that. So, and I have something coming in the next couple of months that will probably make it further away anyway. Inexperienced people can also contribute great ideas. They might not know how to implement something, but they can have an idea for functionality of other stuff. Yes. That is very important to understand, right? And I've said that just because someone is a fresh perspective can often give new insights, right? Because you might read something and read it in a completely different way. But again, it sounds like you're in an environment, George, where you've got a bunch of I'm a senior developer. I don't need to listen to you. You don't know what you're doing. You can be a developer for as long as you want, with the ability to actually listen. Yeah, that's why I like small video game studio. Most people contribute to everything. Yeah, and including time crunch. I would imagine Fullbox games are notorious for that, right? I don't believe in crunch, so yeah. My classmate working in the same place is very much the intern that will say we should do it this and that because I read that. Yeah, you got to accept a little bit of experience, but again, the only crunch I like is Captain. Yeah, crunch isn't healthy. We all know that. It's been kind of widely accepted and spurred as being, terrible. The problem is with games, our expectations as consumers of games are not the same as an expectation of as a software project, right? A regular software project is why game development is nowhere near the same as an application development, right? I knew I liked you, Tic Tic. Yeah, Nestle Crunch. It's more big corporate with tight deadlines that still do it. Yeah, but I mean, look at games like No Man's Sky, right? It's a small development studio developing a cross-platform game. They crunched hard on that, right? Yes, they had money from Sony originally, but that went away, and they're still a smaller studio. They were, there's a lot of instances of small studios doing that because you have a passion, right? Passion will honestly take you further. But if you work for an organization, right, and I'm running the risk of yeah, yeah, they did. That was just the first one that comes to mind. But passion can obviously it can do great things, right? It can lead forward with great software. A lot of great softwares come from a very passionate place. Software we use on a daily basis, right? That doesn't exist without some level of passion from the people that wanted to generate that tool, right, or that game or whatever. Game development being creativity, I can see why crunch is easy to get into there. If you work in an organization, right, there's a level of how do I put it? You owe them only so much, right? There's a level of professionalism that is getting a job done. If you say you're going to get a job done, yeah, get it done, right? But learn how to, and this is where Agile comes in, right? This is where all this process comes in. This is why I feel so passionately about this, because oftentimes we have crunch, right? Because we've let people skip out on this part, this planning component, right? And we don't have enough time to get stuff done. And oftentimes that falls upon us as developers to get it done. But don't feel you owe, right? If you're in a situation where your job very much depends on it, then obviously you're going to be scared that you're going to get fired if you don't do the job. But it's all about transparency, right? You got to make sure that we are transparent. Oh, yeah, we can do that, or no, we can't do that. If you're working in a code base that is messy, unorganized, you don't know where things lie, there's secrets all over the place, then something like that requirement right there can undo you, right? That could mean the difference between a 40-hour work week and a 75-hour work week, right? That there, right, could cause you all manner of problems, right? So you've got to be careful. Crunch to me is when a company will use that excuse that it's dream job or something to make you work more. You're supposed to with that competition. If you're a solo or small team, I feel like it's more passion. It doesn't feel like crunch. Right, exactly. That's kind of where I was heading, right? I think we agree there that passion and crunch, if you're trying to get to a deadline, right, what are you sacrificing? Right? Crunch is harmful from a lot of perspective. And for big games, crunch is really harmful, right? Because those game development companies have put millions behind marketing, right? So you got to be careful. But if you're working for a company that is selling, if you're working for a company that's doing an agile project management platform, right, and they're saying, hey, we need to get this out the door quick. We've promised we've promised people it'll be delivered. Then we failed somewhere in this component, right? We failed in that planning component because we didn't actually represent what we could do. So your code base is very much, you know, TBLC. Are we interns? We do need a name for the community, I suppose. But I think that would be what's the word? Subverting another stream, right? Your project manager will take the hit for that. Yeah, sure. Yeah, knock yourself out, defaults. It'll mean absolutely nothing to anybody. Good project manager is part of the team, right? A good project manager's got your back as much as you've got theirs, right? If you have a good working relationship with people, then you can say, hey, we can deliver this, and they say, okay, are you sure? And they can doubt that, yeah. Well, and you can work together. Showed up late to 90% of all the meetings. Not wrong. But yeah, I'm surprised actually. We've been talking for a long time, and I am completely still focused on what I'm actually meant to be doing here. So, yeah. Looks like I have absolutely 0 viewers on YouTube. So, yeah. But I think it randomly puts me into the end of people's videos on YouTube. Yeah, PO is a bit of a nightmare. A lot of comments were removed. Yes. Yeah, profanity is not acceptable. 9 to 5 office worker. Welcome. Hope you're well. Are you writing C# in VS Code? No, I'm writing C# in JetBrains Rider. Is my preferred IDE. Ah. And I can tell you that I'm working on a 34-inch screen with fonts this size is kind of interesting. I'm not quite that old that I need the size of the font, but apparently the stream is more readable. Do you remember the original Rome Total War? I do remember the original Rome Total War. It's one of my favorite games. I also remember when it was used as part of a BBC Two TV show. I'm going to switch to Rider after my next PR on my program, just because it will make the shortcuts easier. Playing the remastered version. Nice. Yeah, Time Commanders was a TV show. IntelliJ for what? Yeah, Rider's a nice idea. It's fast. I mean, okay, so let's see. I have 35 projects in Liquid Sky at this point. 35 projects. That's crept up quick. Let's see. I exit out of Rider and start Rider back up. How long before I get the project? Right. Yeah. Now, Visual Studio has improved a lot, so I'm not saying Visual Studio can't do what I just did, but Rider has been like that for years for me, so that's why I stick with Rider. Okay. So amazingly, I actually remember what I was doing. Um, you should try Godot. It's horrible. Godot engine right down there. I do tinker with it. But Medieval 2 was probably the one that I played the most. I assassinated the Pope so many times in that game because he didn't like me invading France. uh, you guys are going to get me on games. Okay. I'll leave games discussion. Um, right. So anyone joining the stream, for anyone joining it, actually, if you've been listening to any of the chat, I hope you know that the focus of it is about software development, right? Um, what I'm working on is an agile project management tool. I think Jira. I gotta find a list of actual tools that because I know I've used more than Jira, but I don't remember the names of what I've used. Um, what I'm trying to do is put my spin on that process, right? Because I believe that there is a lot of lacking communication in that process. So what I'm building is an application platform for building the Agile project management tool out. Right now, it's very much focused on the APIs. I do not want to focus on UI until I at least have a lot of the concepts firmed and built out. So right now, what I'm working on is the concept of the planning item. So oftentimes we go and just create stories, and we have this massive backlog of stories, right? Product managers, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that, and then they go and they assign them to developers, or they just sit there, and the backlog is where ideas go to die, right? So what I want to do is introduce an entire process around from the moment a customer has an issue, or from the moment a product manager has an idea, this is tracked. Oh, oh, wow, that's not good. A jump scare in an ad. I apologize. And I don't know why I'm apologizing, because you can't hear me because you're in an ad. There's some downsides to this. I need to make sure I post more of my notifications and stuff. Hmm. So, yeah, generally, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, my apologies, George. I don't know why. I don't know what it would advertise to you. Yeah, ads are kind of a thing of Twitch that you can't really get away from, and you've got to try and control the best you can, right? I run them enough that um, Twitch will not give me pre-rolls. That's the minimum I try and run them, right? If no pre-rolls means people get into the stream quicker, awesome. Yeah. George, thank you very much. I appreciate the sub. Thank you. That's definitely a solution. I sincerely appreciate it. I appreciate the support. It's yeah. Close that ticket. Yeah. Sadly, ads are a component of Twitch that is not conducive to conversation and learning. But with games, people don't really care as much. But with stuff like this, it's harder. So a lot of dev streamers have tried to find. I know that I see on a lot of streams different approaches. Either they put Pirate Software puts up a massive screen. We're in ads. We're waiting. We're doing something else. There's all sorts of other ideas. But if it irritates anybody, if you have um, any problems or you want me to wait, just let me know. Also, this is not just saying it for the sake of saying it. If you're a Prime subscriber, right, Amazon gives you a free Prime sub every month, right? If you're watching a channel, I'm not saying this channel, but I'm saying if you're watching a channel and you have a Prime sub available, you don't need to see ads. You can make Amazon pay the streamer for you not to see ads for a month. So it's kind of a why not? If it's your favorite stream and you're a Prime subscriber, drop the Prime sub. No, it's still amazing. People actually don't know about that benefit. So yeah, make Amazon pay for the ads. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is be consistent with my ticketing components over here, right? ChatGPT just showed me an example of using domain entities as children of themselves. What? That's not good. That's very not good. A location being able to hold locations. None of it's a top level. If it's an actual domain entity, if it's data model, then okay, I can kind of see the need there. But you should never be able to hold. There should be rules there. But the problem is that ChatGPT does not understand, have enough context there. As a general rule, that would be okay to have as a model, right? Because you could have a tree, right? Location has locations, which have location, which has locations, etc. You could do it. You've got to maintain that code though really tightly to make sure you don't have a cyclical reference. Essentially, it is a solution though. Because if you're subclassing location, then but underneath it's the same data structure. Something to review. You definitely want to make sure you review the usage there. But again, that's why if you're using ChatGPT to code, you need to make sure that you're asking, should I follow that advice or is it even correct? Anyway, let's see if we can take this to a good place for today. It just dawned on me what time it is, and I'm getting hungry. I have burgers to make for lunch. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is make sure that this is consistent. Me too. What are we eating? I'm going to make some cheeseburgers. Well, burgers with a nice slice of fresh mozzarella on top, and on ciabatta buns. Me too. What are we eating? I mean, I could just make a class that inherits from location and has the extra data needed to make it a point of interest. Chip chops. The picture that conjures in my mind, George, is way more delicious, and I hope it's not. Well, I hope it's as delicious as my brain just conjured. Yeah, one of the things, by the way, in terms of behavior rise, right? So one of the things that might seem excessive to some people here is I'm going to create a ticket. A ticket, as far as the database object goes, is a piece of information that has a name, a description, a review date, and an assigned user. That sounds better than I actually envisioned, but yes. So here's a ticket, right? When I promote this to be a planning item, right? A planning item has a title, a description, a review date. Notice customer goes away from this piece because customer is actually a concept that tickets cares very much about, right? That is something I'm going to have to introduce at some point, the concept of an actual customer, because tickets care about customers. customer is kind of meta information to everything beyond that piece, right? Because there is a source of this complaint, or there's a source of this ticket. Once you get to planning items and stories, they're just customers who are also interested in this problem or whatever, right? But the information that is in ticket is in planning item. But I'm not going to link back to them. I'm going to publish and recreate all that data, right, in a read-only form. So it's kind of an inheritance, but not inheritance, because I'm like, a planning item can be a ticket, or a planning item can be a planning item. A story can be a ticket, or it can be a planning item, or it can just be a story, right? So you can use the system however you want, but this information gets promoted up, and a lot of information is going to get copied and moved around by virtue of that. But that is not excessive. And it's not excessive because, and I truly believe it's not excessive, because it does allow me to keep that information flowing. It does allow this information to still be updated, to apply its updates to this. This system can own that data that it needs to care about, and not have to worry about, oh, I have a replicated copy over here, or this to have backwards links. So these can be developed independently, even if there's a high cost of data replication. Right. This will start publishing information immediately to Kafka once the ticket's in process, right? Is the design I'm going off right this second? Whether that's true or not, I don't care. I don't really know. Because the concept would be that nothing in the system cares about this unless it's being promoted in some way, shape, or form. So, but yeah, in terms of data design, that is one that is definitely going to be a task. But decorating information, that's kind of where I was going with that, right? You have a location. If a point of interest is just additional meta information around a location, then a point of interest has a location, essentially. Right? It's the extra data added to a location to make it a point of interest, and you can have many points of interest. So, style-wise, when a ticket is added and is not assigned, right? I actually broke out this slightly different, right? I used is within, so I'm not using a time provider either, by the way, because I'm capturing that time, right? So let's take a look at that, because I've not used it yet. So let's see how I like it. Add support ticket. So what I do is I use date time UTC now, right? Which is always a challenge because you can't. Let's see. Do I have? See, that would be the way. Let's have a look. Let's say using time provider. .8. The time provider class has been introduced in .8. Provides two abstractions that we can use. The fake time provider. Really, Microsoft? Really? We chose that path? Watch the video. I'm not going to use time provider. I'm not even going to go there right this second, because that looks like a nightmare that I don't want. Nice idea. I'd have preferred iTime provider as an interface that would be by default applied if I don't define one. That way I can just inject an interface. I don't have to use their fake version of it to override it. I wonder why they chose that path. Why not create an iTime provider interface in the framework? Because then that would be, I mean, people have been doing this, right? So I have a time provider. I pass that in. Now I don't have to worry about this. I can control this deliberately. I can just say, hey, time provider, get date UTC or whatever, and that works. Now in my testing code, I can say, hey, given that I give it a date of this date and time, does it come out with the exact date and time? Because then you can determine whether someone's actually using the time provider. Yeah. So I understand the concept of why to use it, but I don't like the fact that I have to pull in Microsoft's heavy-handed approach, including a new Microsoft library into my testing to swap out the provider. So I assume they do that where they inject a default. I mean, as a time provider built-in is very bloated. Yeah, that's because it's doing everything, right? Which I get, but an interface wouldn't have hurt them and given us the control, because it looks like it only has a couple of methods anyway. Yeah, they're being thorough, right? But even create an interface that has the methods and then say, hey, you can use our fake if you want to have great granular control over it, right? But create the interface. It's okay for you. You're in control of the dependency injection as well. You can control that. Oh, I haven't specified a time provider, therefore you're going to give me the time provider by default, even if it's an interface. So anyway, okay, where are we with time? Okay, we'll go for a few more minutes. Again, if you're new to the stream, please feel free to, there's a Discord that you're more than welcome to join. It is linked in the chat and the panels below in YouTube. This has been a bit of a random stream overall, but that's okay. I think we've got actually a lot discussed. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm trying to make consistent behavior, right? So in this case, the point was I break this down as, okay, when ticket is added, it's not assigned, right? I do ticket was saved, user assigned is not set, ticket has description, ticket has customer name. I've actually captured, I've said, hey, add these things. And now I'm asserting that the actual result, the resulting object, which is I'm capturing when I do this, matches what I expect, right? So in here, I have planning item is created, right? So I'm verifying that I save it to the actual database, right? What did I must have called that something, right? So when ticket is added and not assigned, I actually have a framework for doing this now. So I need to make sure I'm making these changes. That gets rid of this fluff at the top. These now become protected overrides. Again, this is my testing style that has evolved over many years of trying to do unit testing. The way I do it is I have a base class called arrange_act, which literally just defines two methods that you can override. The arrange and act are what would normally get put in each unit test. It leaves my facts focused solely on what I'm trying to assert and not around the fluff around them. So the fluff is all at the bottom of this file. The facts are at the top. I can read them. I can use them. Again, pragmatism. Yeah. So ticket has review date, ticket has added date, ticket has customer name, ticket has description, user assigned is not set, ticket was saved. That's what I called it there. So I'm going to mimic that same behavior. This is bad because I could save any ticket and still pass that test. But what I've done is I've also captured that ticket and I'm verifying that data, right? So I'm not discarding that problem by just saying any ticket save will work, right? So here, this would be planning item is saved. Was saved. I also don't use the word should. Um, I'm not writing these unit tests as as guesswork, right? They pass because they pass. They fail because they fail. They do not need to. I do not need an interim state, so that's why there is no should in my unit tests. A domain event is queued. That is important fact. Right now, this isn't going to do anything. I still do not get unit tests. So much as what? Or in as far as what? What do you get about unit tests? So it could be argued that what I'm about to do here is just kind of writing code for the sake of writing code, right? I have a result object. I'm going to validate that I've set all the fields, right? Fact, planning item has date added, right? Is dot within, and this is a way of cheating. This is how you typically would cheat the time thing, right? Because you're going to say, okay, it's within about 5 seconds of now, right? So the idea of a unit test is to be able to prevent unintended things happening with the code. I think my trouble is I always walk through all the scenarios in my code. So the idea of a unit test is to be able to prevent unintended things happening with the code. So if you're doing TDD, the point is to think about what you need as you need it, not think about all the scenarios, right? Because oftentimes as developers, we try and solve for every problem that might ever happen ever. And then at some point we do, what if that happens and you do this? How you write a try catch, or you randomly smack the keyboard, right? You do something like this, or you write, oh, well, what if they enter a no name, etc. Oh, well, you kind of code, you actually, I'm gonna read what's in chat first before I continue with that. So, yeah, but the point of unit test is that if you change something in your logic, then you might accidentally change something else, and the unit test will catch that. Yeah, well, it's a lot of different factors. So if you're doing TDD, right? Okay, thing to remember is a unit test is only as good as the person who wrote it, right? So a unit test doesn't guarantee anything, right? I can cheat, right? I can cheat a lot, and some people might consider what I'm about to do cheating, right? I'm just building unit tests here. I'm not actually adding much value. I could write this in all manner of ways. But yes, it is also helped you think of all the potential scenarios. Well, no. So I have a use case here, right? Let me focus on the use case. Okay, here's what I need, and this all comes back in to good discussion, right? Define your requirements. Define your requirements, not just the product management requirements. Your requirements as a developer. What do I need to do? You don't want to write things you think you might need, right? So TDD is aimed at helping you do that, right? So you only, the idea is you don't write a line of code unless you've got a test to cover it, and you can stub out a lot of code before you even write the real code. And you're focused on, okay, I need to add a thing to a database. Okay, so what do I need to test? Well, I need to see that it's there, right? This is where this came from, by the way. I need to make sure it publishes an event, right? So you write this code out before you actually write the code. Then you make the code do what that test does, right? So discipline definitely matters when you're writing unit tests, but it is, again, only as good as the person who wrote it. So if you're cheating and you're writing simple unit tests just to validate simple things, then the likelihood is you'll never get a failure. Unit testing, the first time you actually figure out oh, that's why it's helpful, is when you find a bug that you didn't intend or you didn't understand you would find, but you wrote a unit test and you're like, I don't need that. Right? But here's a question though. Say I have a basic like app, UI to API to database with EF. In that paradigm, what should I be unit testing? Any method that is business logic. George is not wrong, right? If you have a rule that says this entity you were trying to create cannot have a start time before the current time, then you would test the logic really actually works. So a lot of people mix integration tests and unit tests, right? Because you feel like you've got to test everything to make it effective. Don't test your database, right? You will never be able to test your database in a unit test because that is just the way things are, right? You have to do an integration test if you need full testing against the database stuff, right? But you test, and this is why the code design matters as well, right? You test, like as George says, any business rule, right? Right now, I don't have very many complex business rules, right? But let's read these tests. Okay, when a ticket is updated, right? Actually, let me run these tests. Let me just do a cert false there. All right, let me make sure I can build before I can run the unit tests, right? And I'll show you why this is useful. Let's run the unit tests on the project, right? So far I do not have a lot of coverage, right? I have 81 tests across 35 projects, right? I have fails on several tests. Luckily, the ones that matter are there. Okay, so let's go into tickets. Tickets has a few rules, right? So concerning support tickets, when deleting a ticket and the ticket does not exist, right? I shouldn't be able to actually try and delete a ticket that doesn't exist. Result is not found. I validated that, right? When deleting ticket and ticket exists, ticket is deleted, right? These, you could argue, are not actual business rules. They're more protecting the code, right? When ticket is added in as not assigned, I'm kind of describing the system. I'm validating that these things happen, right? So if I add a ticket, ticket has the added date, it has a customer name, it has a description, it has a review date, it was saved, and the user is assigned. So if I pass the data in, these will be good, right? I know that these things break, right? So when ticket is updated, when an assigned user is changed, so in this update case, right, each of these things actually makes different behavior, right? So I can actually change individual fields here. So when I assigned user, if let's watch this. So when assigned user is changed, so I've changed the assigned user is changed, the customer name remains unchanged, the date added remains unchanged, the description remains unchanged, last updated is set, review date is unchanged, and status remains unchanged, right? So I validate that last updated gets changed and the username is changed, but nothing else changes. If I go into that code and I go into any code here, right, and I change something, right? So I say, okay, well, actually, I want to change this to say, okay, well, you are now Bob, right? Because someone says, okay, if they don't pass in anything, I want to change it to Bob, right? But I don't write a unit test covering it, right? This will be embarrassing if it fails, but that's what I'm trying to demonstrate. So if it fails, I've written a test that I'm missing. I've got a hole, right? So now when I run this, I should have a failure, right? Because the strings differ. I expected original customer name. I get Bob. So I've broken that code, right? That saves me because now I've introduced a new rule that breaks existing rules because I've documented them using the unit test. So that's why the unit testing is important there, right? Now I can't succeed because I know I can't do a build and I can't get that through to production because it doesn't match the rules. So if that is a new rule, I have to put, this is a black, You will often hear me say Bob. Blackadder is one of my favorite shows. But anyway, yeah. I have a good sense of humor, I feel. I have a British sense of humor, so you can take that as you will. So yeah, the unit tests are very valuable. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to add in all those things again, right? I'm going to validate that these things get set, explicitly get set. You could consider it cheating, but it means that I'm definitely not likely to miss something there. Because if I use this method, right? I use this method of validating planning item was saved, and I have 3 things in there, and I add a 4th thing to the actual data. This test still passes, even if I don't save that value. They basically exist to make sure you didn't break something accidentally when working on something else. Yes, but they also, you should treat unit tests as code, right? Real code. They are production. They are real code. You should treat them with the respect you would deal with real code, and do the same things. So, but anyway, I'm out of time. I do have to go make lunch. I was hoping to get to the end of this test, but I don't feel that is going to happen. Who have we got in? We got 12 people. So let's see who we're going to go out to. You can. Kani is streaming. I'll have a good lunch there, and thanks for keeping us company. Thank you very much. Oh, really? Ads? I will be back tomorrow. If you have not checked it out yet, I do have a poll going in Discord. It is for a coding challenge tomorrow morning. Obviously, it's a day off in the US tomorrow. I am going to do a coding challenge to start the day. It will start at my regular time of 7 a.m. and run till probably around 10. But it's a coding challenge. I have not picked it yet. So if you want to vote, if you want to have a say, drop into Discord, have a look at those options, see if you like one over the other, and I will stream that tomorrow and be working on that. In the meantime, thank you very much for joining me. I do appreciate you being here. I appreciate you hanging out. George, thank you very much for the sub. I really do appreciate that support. And I will be back tomorrow. So I'm going to raid over to Kani, and then I'm going to go make lunch. So, yeah. Thank you for being here. I'm going to go hang out with Kani anyway. So, appreciate it. Take care, and I will see you tomorrow, hopefully. Deflux, thank you for being here for more than 5 minutes. I appreciate it. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.